I am here with Norb from Animal Rising, ex-Animal Rebellion, and he's going to tell us all about Animal Rising and what's happening this summer. So first of all, Norb, how are you? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks, Cliff. It's great to be speaking with you today. Um, about me, I've been vegan about 7 years now. I've always loved animals, always loved the environment, but it was 7 years ago when I really put that into practice. I was at university and I was studying politics, so I was quite political already. And someone was talking to me and they said, you love the environment. I think Cowspiracy had just come out and they basically suggested I should be vegan, and they weren't vegan themselves, but it struck a chord with me, really resonated with me, and I pretty much turned vegan overnight as a result of that. Uh, and I very quickly went through my apathetic vegan phase, and then I was straight into an angry vegan phase where I was like, had my eyes open to all of this cruelty and the animal suffering, and I was like, okay, everyone needs to be vegan. And I went through those phases really quickly, and I think it just made me a natural choice to be an activist, I guess. And I got involved with my local hunt saboteurs. I got a job with the RSPCA as well, which is potentially a little bit controversial. I got it because I loved animals and I thought it was a great way to help them, but very quickly realized the kind of work the RSPCA do is all about companion animals
Hmm.
and very much neglectful of farmed animals. So it was pretty
Yeah,
tiring being around animal lovers day in and day out who would complain about how we treat cats and dogs as a society whilst biting into the bodies of other animals. So yeah, so I quit that job basically to become a full-time activist, and that's where I am now. And that was a good few years ago. I was going out three, four, 5 times a week, stopping people illegally hunting foxes. But I also, Animal Rebellion formed at the same time, around October 2019, and I was really interested to see what they would do. And I got involved very loosely in the background, just going to their events, going to their actions, and it's kind of spiraled since then, to the point now where I'm basically committing most of my time to supporting them.
I met you in London a couple of years ago. I think we were at a rebellion, possibly. And I remember you coming along for lunch, and then we went to Pereza in the evening time. I didn't know who you were at all, man. And then you started to tell me some of the things you've been involved in. I was like, this guy's a freaking legend. So yeah, I really respect you, man. Some of the things you've done over the years. So very similar story to myself, as you probably know. So you're now involved. You were Animal Rebellion, now Animal Rising. Tell me about that evolution and how that came about.
Yeah, so Animal Rebellion obviously formed in 2019, very much off the back of the environmental movement, Extinction Rebellion. And the idea was to use the environmental movement and people's concern for their future to bring the animal message into the mainstream. So it was very much a strategic decision to spotlight the animals. And we always said climate was the strategy and animals were the heart. And we had a lot of success in the public space of like mainstreaming the message of a plant-based future. But in the environment movement as well, I think we brought a lot of people along that journey with us. And you had a lot of environmentalists who didn't really understand that there's more to the climate emergency than just fossil fuels. And a lot of them, I think, have had their eyes open to veganism, have come on that journey with us, and a lot of them get involved and come along to our actions now. But I think it was always inevitable that we were going to make the transition more into the animal space. And certainly the positive association we had with XR at the beginning became increasingly, I want to say, frustrating, where we do incredible things. We were this really incredible movement in our own right. And we do great things, and then the headlines would be like, offshoot of Extinction
Yeah.
Rebellion do this. So we had no name recognition. People didn't really know who we were or what we were doing. And that impacts the movement when trying to get the message out. If it just looks like a group of people doing stuff and it's not coherent, it's not linked up.
Yeah.
And we also saw that whilst we were doing these like really impactful environmental actions, like we shut down, well, they were always for the environment and the animals combined. Like we shut down all 4 of McDonald's distribution centres in the UK over the course of a weekend. We then hit McDonald's again and shut down their only burger processing facility. And we also, at the end of last year, we targeted the dairy industry and basically blockaded 50% of the dairy distribution centres in the country. And we saw empty shelves of milk in supermarkets across half the UK. And that's a really powerful, impactful thing to do. But alongside that, we also rescued 23 beagle puppies from a breeding testing facility, so a breeding facility for the testing industry. So we always had the animals there. And when we did that,
the MBR thing was almost like a catalyst for change to focus more on the animals. Would you say that was accurate?
100%, I'd agree. Yeah, I was there when we first did it in June of last year, and the response was incredible. And I think it showed us that the strategic reason to focus on the climate was it's still there. It's certainly still there, but there's more space now to bring in the animals and to start this conversation about, if we love animals so much like we say we do, why do we continue to exploit them? Why do we continue to treat them like this? Why do we deny them rights? So yeah, it was a natural evolution, and we made the strategic decision, but also the heartfelt decision to refocus on the animals, keep that climate message in there, because we know animal farming and fishing is one of the most devastating things for the environment.
Absolutely.
And wildlife as well. Like, if we want to talk about extinctions, it's deforestation, it's climate change, but we know it's all fueled by the animal farming and fishing machine.
I think people was it Ben did the somersault over the cage at MBR? I think people
yeah.
The iconic moment of the animal rights movement last year. So this year, Animal Rising obviously have launched like a couple of weeks ago now, and we have the summer of Animal Rising coming up and has already started. So can you tell me about that and what's all that about?
Yeah, so as I say, the purpose of all of this is to put our relationship with animals, which we genuinely think is a broken relationship, put that relationship at the heart of the public conversation and start people questioning, at the dinner table, at breakfast, in their homes, on the street, why do we continue to treat animals like this? And can we actually do better? So yeah, the Summer of Animal Rising is all about that. The way we're going to do it is, well, we launched by targeting the Grand National, which is the biggest horse race in the UK. It's watched by like 600 million people, brings in like 300 million pounds in bets. Yeah, it was incredible. Maybe I'll talk more about that as well. But we're going to keep hitting these horse races because we know they're televised, they get the people talking. And I think once you get people thinking about horses, the jump to talk about cows, pigs, chickens, fish isn't so big. So we'll keep doing that. But in between that, we'll also be occupying farms, shining a spotlight on the food industry in particular, and openly and accountably helping animals to freedom. So what I mean by that is we'll be doing rescues of animals. I say helping them to freedom because they fight for their own freedom every day. So we're just going to be helping them over the last little hurdle. And
over the fence.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. And handing up, but the crucial difference is, people do this behind the scenes all the time. And certainly don't look for credit, don't ask for credit, but we'll be doing it and then we'll be handing ourselves into the police. And it's not because we're looking for attention or we want the spotlight on us, but it's because we know that by doing that, we can continue the conversation.
Of course, it makes total sense to me. Like, it's not such a hard conversation to have to somebody. If you can get them to admit that a dog or a cat or a horse has intrinsic value, well, then you just need them to make that leap to realize that a cow and a chicken and a pig also have intrinsic value as well. So
100%.
It makes a lot of sense. And we need some way of getting the conversation into the public arena. So that's what you guys are now doing. And I think it's an excellent strategy. Really props to whoever came up with the idea. So The Daily Mail infiltrated the group before the Grand National Action, and obviously outed it in the front page of their newspaper about, was it 2 weeks before?
Yeah.
How did that affect the action? Do you think it was a negative or a positive in the end?
Yeah, it's interesting actually because we're quite an open movement, um, which makes some people nervous to get involved uh, because of fear of repercussions and things like that. But ultimately, we plan to get 300 people at the Grand National, and we hoped to get um, at least a third of those onto the tracks. And to do that, you have to have a certain level of openness. Before the Daily Mail even caught wind of it, I'd rung about, not me personally, but our group had rung about 1,000 people to get involved. Mm-hmm. And it was inevitable that it was going to get out one way or another. And ultimately, it was leaked from a very public, very open meeting that anyone could have come along to. And I always knew the police would know by the time we got there. I just didn't expect.
Did this guy just join the meeting as somebody interested in taking part in the event, and he was actually a journalist? Is that what happened, yeah?
Yeah, no, she was involved since November of last year, actually. And yeah, I mean, as I say, I always knew the police would find out, and I was always operating off this idea that we'd be going up against quite a significant security arrangement. And we were prepared for that. But I don't think we were prepared necessarily to make front page news before we even did anything. I think that was pretty incredible.
The conversation certainly started early. It started a week before rather than on the day.
And the second it was in the public sphere, all we had to do to continue the conversation was get one person on the track.
Mm-hmm.
Before, if it was completely clandestine, if it was completely secret, arguably, you know, they could have downplayed it on the day, like, oh, one or two. But no, everyone was watching. Well, the world was watching. Cameras were watching.
I think the one thing we didn't realize watching at home was there was 121 people arrested. So it seemed when I was watching on TV that there was a few people arrested, but there was 118 or 121 arrested on the day, which is a huge number of people. It's a huge police exercise. So how did it go down in the day for you personally and for the group?
Yeah. So yeah, it was 118 arrests, which is pretty, you know, I don't think I've ever seen that many dedicated people willing to go to that level and put themselves on the line. You know, if you've seen the videos, there were people like throwing themselves at fences to get over, people cutting themselves on barbed wire, basically to protect the horses, right? We were there to start the conversation, but we were there to protect the horses as well. And how it went down on the day for me. So I was actually inside with the crowds, and we had the majority of people. The plan was to try and get them over the fences with ladders. But we knew we were going to be up against quite a significant police response, so we didn't know how that was going to go. And so we had a team on the inside just in case. And I was sat all day. It was horrible. We had to watch the races, and we watched Dark Raven when Dark Raven fell in a previous race and died. And it was really interesting to see, like, the camera just pans away.
Yeah. Can you hear in the crowd? Because when I was watching, obviously I was watching the Grand National because I knew what was happening with you guys. And one of the horses fell at the first fence, and there's an audible hush in the crowd. So the people there, even though they're hardened to it and have seen it before, obviously, even with that reaction with them, they know that's wrong. I think.
Yeah,
that's my perception anyway, because there's the crowd are cheering, and all of a sudden there was like an audible, the crowd just went silent for a few moments, and then 10 seconds pass and everybody's cheering again. So,
but you know what? That was the difference. So earlier in the day, Dark Raven fell in an earlier race, and it was kind of just ignored and hushed and moved on from. And then in the lead up to that last big race, the Grand National race itself, the big one with all the bets on it, that everyone at home tunes in to watch effectively. That was the one we were looking to disrupt. That's the one we got onto the track for. So I was there in the crowd, and the plan was to basically, we couldn't bring in equipment, we couldn't bring in ladders. We had this like 7-foot, 8-foot fence to get over. And we practiced the night before, like boosting each other over the fence. But we identified an open gate. And so we knew even if we got over the fence, there was basically a cop every 5 meters.
Yeah.
So they'd have just like caught us, and that would have been it on the other side. But this open gate was the game changer, and we got through. 3 people out of 9 who were on the inside got through that gate.
You got
Uh,
through, yeah.
I got through. Yeah, I really. Yeah, I was. We were all wearing a disguise. And in some of the photos, it actually looks like I'm just one of the security dragging people away. But I was locked on very, very briefly. But it was interesting because, yeah, we didn't stop the race. We delayed it by about 15 minutes. And as you say, when Hill 16 fell at the first jump and died, there was this audible silence, like this gasp. And people left in tears. We had a
Seriously.
protest outside, and people were walking. They walked in, obviously, like in the morning, ready for the day, excited, probably already a little bit tipsy, and they left crying. And if we weren't there, I don't think people would have made the connection. I don't think people would have cared it much. And certainly in the media, we wouldn't have been speaking about Hill 16 or Dark Raven or Envoy Special, who died early in the event.
Sad, man, that somebody, and I say somebody meaningfully, was forced into giving their life up for a stupid horse race and for people to gamble some money on. It's terribly, terribly sad. You were treated heavily handed, yeah.
Yeah, so when I got to, we basically, the 3 of us got to one of the jumps, and the plan was to glue on. It'll be interesting if the police watch this, but I'm going to court and I'm probably going to trial, and I'm not apologetic at all for my actions, and I'll stand in front of a jury and I'll say that. But yeah, we tried to attach ourselves with glue, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to. Someone else was, and it didn't really make a difference. The security just ripped her hands apart anyway. But I was holding on for basically with all of my strength, and they couldn't get me off. And one of the security actually just put his arm around my neck and choked me unconscious. And the next thing I remember was like waking up face down in the grass with cuffs behind my back.
That's mad. That's absolutely mad. Just desperate in any way possible to defend what they're doing. What would you say, Norb, to people who maybe perhaps aren't on board with this type of action, with direct action like that and disrupting events and stuff? What would you say to those vegans maybe who are sitting on the fence wondering whether to get involved or not? Or is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? What would you say to them?
Yeah. It's a really good question. It's one we get a lot. So much of what we do pushes the boundaries of what's acceptable. And a lot of people think we put people off going vegan, or we put people off the movement. But I think ultimately we've done the outside protests. The Grand National's had outside protests for years, and we haven't seen a conversation like the one we're having in the UK at the moment around horse racing, but around our treatment of animals generally. We wouldn't be having that conversation if we hadn't gone on the track. So we know it leads to conversations, and we know it leads to change, and we've seen it as well throughout history. The suffragettes obviously weren't necessarily standing up for horses, but they got on the track at Epsom to push the really important issue of women, the vote for women. And obviously we're a social movement with a goal of liberation for animals. And so we know if we use similar tactics, not only will we protect the horses themselves, but we can shift society with us. And I really hope that's what we achieve.
I think if people look historically into non-violent direct action, you will find, or well, you probably already know, obviously you do, but people will find that it is one of the few forms of activism that actually drives change by bringing things into the public perception that perhaps weren't talked about before. So it absolutely works.
And it's often unpopular.
It's almost always unpopular with the masses. That's just the way it goes. But if it makes change happen quicker, then I am all for it in every way. I wanted to ask you a question, something I noticed personally. So in the past, when animal rights activists have been brought onto the television, I'm not talking about the earth and heads, but people who are involved in direct action or whatever, sometimes they've struggled with the conversations with the likes of Piers Morgan and people like this. But I've noticed with Animal Rising, like 2 from memory in the last week, Alex Lockwood and Orla are extremely articulate and they hold a very nice line with the person they're speaking to. It's almost as if they've been trained to speak in a certain way. But is that what's happening? And if so, I think it's a very smart thing to do because they come across absolutely brilliantly.
Yeah, I think to prepare for interviews, yeah, we put a lot of practice in, we put a lot of training in, but we also very deliberately trying to come across a certain way. And I think historically, vegans have built up this reputation for being angry and
Mm-hmm.
fighty and blaming people and shaming people. And ultimately, if we want to appeal to people at home, we have to do it delicately. And there's a time and place for everything. I think
Mm-hmm.
you can be harsher with some people and you can be gentler with others. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly, I try to find the right balance for people
Of
in my
course.
life. And sometimes I push the boundaries. I absolutely do. But when you're on a big mainstream show, you want to come across relatable and you want to come across kind because we're doing this for the animals and we are doing it because we believe we're good people. And I think the majority of people in the world think they're good people,
Yeah.
but I know we can do better as a society. And that's what we're asking people to do. But if we go out and we shout at them and we're like, you're awful people, they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to come on that journey with us.
Yeah, it's something I noticed that MPs have done and politicians for years is when somebody asks them a question, they don't necessarily answer the question that they've been asked. They say what they want to say. And I noticed that you guys are doing the same thing. So that Piers Morgan or whoever asks a stupid question, you don't react to it and you say what you came on to say. So it's a
Yeah,
really smart thing to do, really
yeah,
clever. And yeah, I watched a lot of the interviews on YouTube and on TV as well, and they came across great. So props to those guys for that. Um, can you tell me how people can get involved or support animal raising?
yeah, absolutely. So the best thing to do is go to our website, so animalrising.org. And on the landing page, there's a form to sign up. So if you want to get involved, you can just fill in that form, and it's got all of the various things we do as options on that form. But if you don't think you're ready yet, you can also come to one of our Zoom talks to hear more about what we do, or you can donate to support us. Standing up for the animals isn't always cheap. And you
Mm.
can find all of that on our website, animalrising.org.
Am I correct in saying the Zoom talks are Wednesdays at 7 p.m.? Is that right? Yeah. Okay,
Every
cool.
Wednesday, yeah, I want to say 7 p.m.
I'll put a couple of links in below in the description and then people can find it from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, finally, last question. Any chance you might be coming over to Northern Ireland over here to run a workshop or to do some NVDA training if
Yeah.
we can get enough people interested over here?
No, I think we 100% should. Yeah, we very much want to set up a group in Ireland and Northern Ireland.
Or the
And so,
north of
yeah,
Ireland,
sorry,
or the north of Ireland.
or the north of Ireland. Yeah,
I was
yeah.
explaining that to you last week, the sensitivities around whichever way you say that. So,
Yeah, no, but we would definitely like to have a group up there. So I think it would be really great. I'd love to come over and run a non-violence training
mhm.
and maybe give a talk. So yeah, we should definitely set that up. Let I think if people want to get involved now, fill in the form, and then
We can
we
see
can see how
numbers.
many people call out, and then when we set something up, we can contact them.
Sweet. Sounds good to me. Norb, you are an absolute legend. I am very glad I met you. I think it's a couple of years ago now in London, and I appreciate everything that you do so much and everything that everybody at Animal Rising has done in the last couple of weeks and will do in the future. So hopefully we'll meet up again very, very soon.
I'm sure
And
we will.
thank you for giving your time up today. I know you're a busy man, so cheers for that.
No worries. Thanks so much, Cliff.
Thank you, my man. Thank you.